Algonquin College's Food and Wine Pairing Workshop. I'm Michelle and I'm the events officer with the events team, and today we are joined by Dee Carruthers from Delicious Eats and sommelier Joey Krueger. So before we get started, we're just going to go over a couple of housekeeping items. We ask that you please keep your microphone muted during the presentation. However, we encourage you to turn your cameras on for some face-to-face time. Along the bottom of the screen, you will find a button called Entitled Chat. When you select this option, a pop-up window will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. You can ask questions throughout the workshop. We welcome you to ask your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand. So this is just along the participants tab. Click raise hand, and this will raise your virtual hand, and then I will call upon you and you can ask your question live. So to kick off the event, we would like everyone to now open up the chat tab along the bottom of the screen. And in a couple of seconds, we're going to give you a question to answer, and we would like you to answer the question by typing in the chat. But please wait to press send until we all have everything typed, and then we can send it at the same time. So the question is, what is your favorite fall food? So I'll give everyone a couple seconds, and you can type out your answer. And I'll count down. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Pumpkin pie. Perfect. Turkey. Thanksgiving. Great. Thank you so much. So feel free to continue to use the chat throughout if you have any questions for the facilitators for today. So now I'm pleased to introduce our two special guests who will be leading us through the food and wine workshop. So first we have Dee Carruthers of Delicious Eats. So she developed this wonderful menu for us, and Dee graduated from business school at Western University 3 years ago. Dee decided to follow her passion for food and totally switch careers. Dee has a culinary degree, and she's perfected her skills cooking in one of Toronto's top restaurants, Richmond Station. For the past year, Dee has been working with a test kitchen at THP, a Toronto-based agency developing food content and media for major brands. When Dee is not in the test kitchen at work, she's usually at home in her kitchen developing recipes and sharing photos on her Instagram and website, deliciousEats.com. Now, Joey Krueger is a hospitality and wine industry professional with over 20 years of international experience across a broad spectrum of the food and beverage world. Her experience ranges from boutique wineries to luxury brands, exotic destination cruising to contemporary regional dining. Joey moved to the Okanagan Valley in 2015, and Joey joined Mission Hill Family Estate as head sommelier. Joey's passion for food, wine, spirits, and travel spurred her to undertake the WSET diploma and is proud to have completed the program in 2019. So now, Dee, I'm going to pass it over to you to lead us through the first.
I'm having an issue. My video just went off. I think I have to restart my computer super quickly. I'm so sorry. This sometimes happens if I leave my video on for too long. I'm 5 minutes and I'll be back. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you want to talk about the wine first, Joey?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to jump in.
Sorry, 5 seconds.
No worries.
Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm thrilled to be involved with Algonquin College and with the team that's put this together. So thanks so much for having me. I am here to sort of guide you through the food and wine pairings and the wine experience. As mentioned by Michelle, whenever you have questions, please feel free to interrupt me. I listen to myself speak all the time. So I'm happy to hear from you. Out the gate, obviously, Dee's prepping the first course, which is a butternut squash crostini. And I do want to speak to the pairing on that, but I do just kind of want to touch briefly on food and wine pairing and sort of a little bit of the science that's behind it. I think the biggest and best rule of thumb out the gate is that break the rules, drink what you like. That's actually the most important thing. At the end of the day, if you're not a fan of Sauvignon Blanc, it doesn't matter if you've got the perfect pairing, you're not going to enjoy it. So that's the number one rule of thumb with me, just drink what you like. However, when we're speaking about the food and wine pairing aspect of dining experience, there are some physiological reactions that are happening on your palate that we try to sort of guide and steer with the appropriate wines. And then you have some sort of physiological reactions to certain components in wine and food as well. Great example of that is acidity. Acidity can be found in everyday things like citrus, so limes and lemons, and acid on your palate really kind of behaves the same way when wine, where if you were to bite into a lime or a lemon, you would immediately start to salivate. That's sort of that physiological reaction that you have to acidity. And that can be super helpful when you're having something a little bit fattier or richer or creamy, because that salivating cleanses your palate and kind of creates a state of balance for you to go ahead and take the next bite. So we do talk a lot about those physiological reactions when talking about pairings. I don't want to go over the top and bore you all, but if you do have some questions about how that kind of experience is created or what went behind the selections, then please feel free to let me know. So with the butternut squash crostini, I was really excited to see this because this is actually a match made in heaven for Viognier. And that was my number one recommendation. I'm not certain that everyone here has had a Viognier. Viognier gets a really hard rap because it's very difficult to pronounce. And believe it or not, that can actually dictate the success of a particular type of wine. Because sometimes the world of wine and food can be quite intimidating. And when you're kind of curious about something, just naturally as humans, we're a little bit intimidated and don't really want to pronounce something incorrectly. So Viognier doesn't get ordered as much and doesn't get consumed as much because people can't pronounce it. That said, Viognier finds its spiritual home in the Northern Rhone in France. It is grown all over the world, and it's very, very unique in that it has one of the most incredible aromatic profiles out of all the varietals on planet Earth. It's unbelievably perfumed in a way that almost makes you want to swim in Viognier or bathe in it. If you could walk out smelling like Viognier at the end of the day, you'd probably be pretty delighted. You always get these really like stunning, bright, white floral notes. You'll get peach, apricot, honey. And I'm never really one to tell you what you're going to taste in a wine. These are just sort of notes that you get typically from these varietals, and these are the notes that they're typically known for. When doing food and wine pairings, you can take a couple different approaches. You can do sort of opposites attract, as I like to call it, where I'm sure we've all had sort of that sweet and sour combo that's delightful. So that's that sort of opposite attracts approach. The other thing that you can do is try to enhance certain aspects in the food with the wine and vice versa. And so when looking at this list of ingredients, when I actually saw, you know, the butternut squash itself, it's just a little bit sweet, and there's a little bit of honey, and then there's that sort of zesty aspect. Even that little bit of ricotta, Viognier actually has typically can have sort of a viscosity to it and a texture that's really unique. So seeing all of those ingredients combined really pushed me towards the world of Viognier. I've selected one from Summerhill Pyramid Winery in the Okanagan Valley. As was mentioned by Michelle, I've spent years of my life living in Canada's western wine producing region, so sort of the sister producing region to Ontario. It's very, very unique and quite different from Ontario in many, many ways. But Summerhill Winery is actually where I am currently employed as a winemaker. So I'm in the midst of learning how to make wine. And as a result, I thought I would at least share if nobody had the opportunity to grab this wine, at least share the expression of it with you. How are we doing for questions so far? We're all right?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's nothing in the chat box as of now.
Perfect. One other thing I did want to touch on, and I'll use this opportunity to do so, is talk about how to taste really quickly. And when it comes for me, part of my passion and love for wine and food is that when you have a harmonious pairing and when you have something that works so beautifully together, you get to extract the absolute largest amount of pleasure from the experience. And I think as humans, you know, we do kind of like to be hedonistic at times, and this is one of those times where just the potential for like that pleasure on your palate is so strong when you've got that sort of match made in heaven. It's ideal. But one of the parts to really get that amount of pleasure is understanding how to taste wine. And so we always say there's 3 things to use when tasting a wine. The first thing you want to do is use your eyes. So you actually do want to take a really good look at the color of the wine. So this Viognier has sort of a little bit more of a depth, like a darker hue. And that will actually kind of tell you a little bit about the wine itself, a little bit about the texture that's going to be in the glass, and a little bit about the varietal as well. If you're doing a blind tasting, that's like your sneaky first clue as to what might be in there. The next step is to use your nose. I always say the nose knows, because believe it or not, over 75% of what we taste is in fact in what we smell. And often when I tell people that, it takes them by surprise. But I mean, anybody can think probably back to the last time they had a bit of a head cold, and as soon as your nose is stuffed up, you can't really taste much at all. So I always encourage people to actually spend some time smelling the glass, and get your nose in there. I mean, that's what the nose knows for. And when you see us swirl the glass like this, it's not just to try and look cool, if it looks cool, but in fact, it's to create more surface area for the wine in the glass and to increase oxygenation. And when you add a little bit of oxygen to the wine that's in the glass, you actually cause the aromatics in the glass to lift out of the glass and give you more. So going back to that sort of hedonistic approach, I want to extrapolate as much pleasure as I can from that glass. So always give your wine a really good swirl, even if you have to do it on the table, because you really will get those lifted aromatics. And then, of course, the third aspect with which you taste a wine is on the palate. One thing that you'll often notice wine professionals engaging in is this weird sort of backwards swirl with the wine on your palate. I'm not going to do it because it's kind of embarrassing. But what you're actually doing, again, is you're increasing the oxygen that's crossing the wine on your palate and doing that sort of, imagine doing a backwards whistle over the wine slightly. And again, what that's actually doing is engaging your entire set of olfactory senses collectively, and ergo getting a little bit more of that pleasure out of the glass.
I'm back.
Yeah, Andy is back.
I'm so sorry. I was having serious technical difficulties. My video just decided it's not going to work. But we're back. So thank you for Joey for taking the lead there for a little bit. Let's hope the video stays for the remainder of this. But anyways, I guess we'll get started. So on the food a little bit, and then we'll go back to some more wine stuff. But we're going to do three dishes today. We're going to start with the squash crostini. It is the fall theme, as we had in our first question. So I thought a squash crostini would be really nice. And then we're going to do a mushroom pasta, which is one of my favorite dishes ever to make. I love mushroom, and it's a really nice hearty dish, but it's still vegetarian. So I thought that would be a fun one for you guys to learn. And then last, we're going to do a really easy apple crisp that takes 15 minutes to make. So good for weeknights when you want to have a little apple crisp. Anyway, so let's get started. I actually roasted off the squash beforehand. I'll show you guys. So it's just diced pretty small and roasted in the oven at 450 degrees with salt, pepper, and oil. So if you're following along and you haven't done that step, get that going right now. And a couple key things when you're roasting your squash. I really like to toss my veg with the oil and the salt before spreading it out on the sheet tray, just so every little piece gets coated in seasoning and oil. And the other thing is making sure it's spread out really nicely, so your food doesn't just steam on it against each other. Like that's how you get these really nice caramelized, I don't know if you can see, caramelized bits when they all have space to crisp up. So that's a few tips. What is the trick to dicing it like that? I like to make cut my squash into a nice rectangle. So form it into, like, especially the base part. I wish I had an extra squash to show you, but the long part of the squash, I like to cut into a rectangle with all the skin off. And that way you can cut it into planks and then cut it into little strips and then go back in and dice it so you can get all nice uniform pieces. So the squash crostini is pretty easy. It's just the roasted squash, a little ricotta underneath, and then some garnishes. So for the ricotta, this is just regular ricotta. We're gonna add a little bit of lemon zest into it, about a teaspoon or like half a lemon maybe. And that just really brightens up the cheese. It's a pretty neutral tasting cheese. And you could really use any soft cheese. You could use mascarpone or even cream cheese. Any soft cheese will work. And then this isn't a very salty cheese, so we're definitely gonna add a little pinch of salt and some pepper. Mix that all around. It's nice and creamy. And then I have my baguette already all toasted up and ready to go. This is also a nice appetizer to make because you can sort of do all the prep ahead of time. Like you can roast your squash earlier in the day, keep it in the fridge, and then I would just bring it up to room temperature before you're serving. And you could make this ricotta mixture before as well, which is really nice. So we're just gonna go add a little bit of ricotta to each piece. I don't know if, Joey, did you already talk about the pairing for this?
I did actually.
Okay, perfect. So I missed that part.
No, that's okay. I touched on the ricotta and sort of that like really viscous texture, and that's part of why I picked Viognier, because Viognier can actually stand up to that because it also carries that sort of viscous texture.
There was actually, Joey, just a question about the wine. So it was about Summerhill. It says Summerhill is an organic winery. Does that mean other wineries are using pesticides, or what's the difference between organic and those that are not organic?
That's a bit of a loaded question. There could be an entire class just on that. But yeah, organics and biodynamics are two sort of environmental classifications that are quite regulated in Canada and all over the globe, in fact. So there's certain parameters to what you can and cannot add to your vineyards, to the fruit, to the bins where the fruit come in, to the actual tools that you use when making the wine. So it's very, very strict. Just because something is organic doesn't mean that they're not using some sort of spray. What it means is that the spray itself is organic and is something that really has come from the earth rather than is a chemical based. So organics are definitely healthier for you and can be better. It doesn't necessarily guarantee quality, and also doesn't mean that there hasn't been a spray involved. So it really kind of comes down to the philosophy of the winery and the producer itself. I'm happy that people drink wine, period. So whatever you drink, whenever you drink it, that makes me happy. I'm just a massive wine dork at the end of the day. So if you're drinking wine, I feel good about it. But I do like to caution people when you're looking at some of those like bigger mass-produced wines that are really super cost-effective. There's a reason why. So usually you've got a lot of those lesser expensive wines come in much higher volumes. And when you've got higher volumes of fruit and crops, you have a lot of challenges with regards to kind of manage it. A lot of people forget that, in fact, wine making is in fact wine growing, which is farming. So there's a lot that actually goes into that. And so with those sort of more cost-effective options, you've got these large crops, ergo, you usually have to spray a lot more on the vines. to keep them healthy and get that fruit into your facility. So that's where you'll kind of run into some of the more unpleasant chemicals being sprayed on the fruit that goes into that wine.
Awesome, that's cool. I didn't know that.
I hope that answered it.
So we're almost done the crostini. I just topped it with the squash. I added some roasted pecans. You could use any nut. I like it with pine nuts a lot, or you could use walnuts, whatever you got on hand. Pistachios would be lovely. And then we're just gonna cut up some basil. We're gonna chiffonade this, which is like a fancy culinary technique. And really you just stack all your leaves together, roll it up, so it's really easy, and then you can just go along and cut into really nice thin ribbons. And again, like the way I cook too is like I just like to cook with whatever I have. So if you don't have basil, you could use parsley. If you don't have parsley or you don't like these herbs, like any soft herb would work perfectly good. Even like mint would be interesting, would sort of change the vibe of it, but like whatever you like. And that's really it. I'm just gonna finish this with a drizzle of honey, make it nice and sweet, bring out the sweetness in the squash. Sort of messy because it's sticky with the honey, but I don't have a problem with that. So that is the first app, and it's like super easy to put together. You can make it ahead of time. Yeah, nice for fall. And I actually used gluten-free crostini, so you could definitely make this gluten-free. If you wanted to make it vegan, you could swap out the you could just not put any of the ricotta, and it would be bomb.
Did you butter the bread?
What's that?
Did you butter the bread?
Do I butter it? I just brush it with olive oil.
Oh.
Did you ask if I butter it?
Yeah, there was a question in the chat.
Oh no, I just brushed it with olive oil and then just broiled it in the oven for like a minute till it gets nice and toasty.
Perfect, thank you.
Is anyone making this right now?
I wish I was.
I have so much food, guys. I wish I could share it with you. That should be a technology, passing food through Zoom. Yeah, anyways, okay, so one course done. Now we're gonna do the, I'm gonna put this off to the side. 1 second. My tiny apartment kitchen doesn't have that much counter space. Okay, so now we're gonna do the mushroom pasta, which is just like a creamy, delicious mushroom pasta. And if you like truffle, I drizzle a little white truffle oil on top at the end. It's one of my favorites. So first things first, it's a pasta. So first thing I would do is get your pasta pot on, lots of water, lots of salt, and get that up to a boil. So I'm just gonna turn it up high. And then you're gonna wanna use a nice big pan for sauteing all your mushrooms. I have in here butter and oil. I like to use both because I love butter, but the oil keeps it from, oil has a higher smoke point, so it keeps it all from, prevents it from burning. So I like to use a mix of both. And we're gonna get that up, preheat the pan to like medium high. And just get going on our mushrooms. So we're gonna use a variety of mushrooms today. There's so many beautiful mushrooms out there that you could choose from. Today we just have your standard cremini. You can find these everywhere. They're pretty everyday, but also delicious. And then we also have shiitake, which are like these guys. These are probably one of my favorite mushrooms. And we just slice off the stem and cut them into nice ribbons like that. And then the other mushroom I wanted to highlight is this beautiful Naitaki mushroom, which is also called hen of the woods. If you've probably heard of it, if you've ever seen like a hen of the woods mushroom at a restaurant, it's also called Naitaki. That's the Japanese name. And it's beautiful. So what we're gonna do with this one is just sort of peel away pieces, and then you can literally just like tear it into nice long shreds, bite-sized pieces. And the key, like for this, I like to keep the mushrooms sliced pretty thin so they cook fairly quick and get nice and caramelized and brown. And don't buy pre-sliced mushrooms. They're never good. So just always buy regular mushrooms and just slice them here at home. That's my biggest recommendation. Okay, we're just gonna slice this up. Any questions? Sorry.
Where do you find the specialty mushrooms?
You'd be surprised. Like I got this at Farm Boy, which is a beautiful grocery store, but it's like nothing too fancy. I also love to go, I live in Toronto, so I love to go to like St. Lawrence Market for my mushrooms. I find smaller stores will usually have nicer mushrooms, but I think like you could find like nice oyster mushrooms at any like superstore, I think. Shiitakes are pretty much at any store. But it's fun to have a mix, variety in the pasta and not just stick to one. So I can hear my butter sizzling in the pan behind. So we're gonna add, this is quite a bit of mushrooms. I think the recipe I shared says 1 pound. This is definitely more than 1 pound, but we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna add that right to the pan. And we are going to be adding shallots and garlic, but I'm going to add them near the end so the mushrooms can get really caramelized and cooked without the garlic and the shallots burning. If you started with the garlic and the shallots, they would probably burn before your mushrooms got to the point that you wanted them to be. So I like to start with the mushrooms and then add the shallots and garlic and finish them all together. And it's a really easy like one pan dish, other than the pasta boiling in the other pot. But yeah, so right now I just have the mushrooms in there. You don't need to move them around too much. Let them do their thing. Let them get some nice color. And then you can start turning them around. But yeah, just let them do their thing for a little bit. And yeah, we have our boiling water going. And then if you are following along for cooking, I don't think many people are, but the final dessert, we need the oven, so preheat your oven now to 425 degrees. I don't know if Joey, you want to speak about the wine now, or?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, awesome.
This looks incredible, by the way. I'm actually so excited. I'm also obsessed with mushrooms.
Yeah.
So I got really, really excited about this. But not only just because I'm obsessed with mushrooms, because this is one of the easiest pairings you can possibly do. Pinot Noir and mushrooms are like peas and carrots. Like they are absolutely, anytime you see a mushroom-focused dish, I encourage you to go straight to Pinot Noir. The two just sing together. And that's what the Pinot Noir sourced, whether it be from Bourgogne in France or whether it be from Niagara, like this one is. It's just a stunning varietal with mushrooms. And that is for a couple reasons, but predominantly, as I was speaking with the last wine with the Viognier, Pinot Noir usually it's bright and really, really fresh because its acid component is quite high. And for something like this where there's a cream, like a creaminess to the actual pasta, that acidity will cut through that cream and leave your palate refreshed, so it doesn't actually build. But yeah, Pinot Noir is, it'll be bright and fruit forward, but always has this underlying nuance of sort of like a mushroom or a sort of savory note that lies underneath. And the incredible thing about Pinot Noir as it ages, that sort of underlying note of darkness, that earthiness, that mushroom sort of underlying hint starts to become more apparent. So really aged Pinot Noirs can be so beautiful because they're so complex and you get so many flavors and aromas out of them once they've actually got a little bit of age on them. The wine I specifically chose for this dish was from Westcott Vineyards. And of course, we did a shout out to the west coast of Canada with our wine region there. I, of course, wanted to honor Ontario. But a little extra fun fact, Westcott Vineyards has sort of a personal connection for me. So Garrett Westcott, which is one of the 4 family members that run the property, is a dear friend of mine from Ottawa. And as everyone is here from Algonquin College, I thought it would be great to sort of honor one of our local Ottawa natives. So he and his family started this property a few years ago and are just doing wonderful things in Jordan, in Niagara. And so I know that this wine for them specifically is actually, it's definitely a labor of love, like most Pinot Noirs are, because as spectacular and magical as Pinot can be, unfortunately it can be very moody and very testy, both to grow. It's very, very finicky to grow, and it's also very difficult to make into wine. So for that reason, it's called the heartbreak grape, because so many people love it, and it's such a challenge and a real heartbreaker at times, and for some people. So this product from Westcott Vineyards is an absolute delight. So if you don't have it tonight, I do encourage you to sort of reach out and grab a bottle next time you're at the LCBO. Again, super bright and fresh and fruit forward. You've got a little bit of those darker nuances kind of peeking their head through. And this has spent a good amount of time in oak, but a good portion of neutral oak as well. And the reason why I'm speaking to the oak profile is because oak does actually add to the overall profile in the wine. So a brand new French oak barrel will offer baking spices and French vanilla, whereas a neutral oak barrel, so a barrel that's been used several times, so some of those spicy notes that you're getting from the wood have muted to a point where they're no longer offering that flavor to the wine, are still really effective in allowing really, really slow amounts of oxygenation over time. And with oxygen throughout the maturation period of a wine's life, that oxygen can really add to the overall aromatics and the palate of the wine, but also again to that texture piece. So you want to have something, especially with a mushroom, that can be a little bit like chewy, like mushrooms have that, just like that gorgeous umami kind of chewiness to it. Pinot Noir actually, that has spent a little bit of time in oak like this, will actually have enough of that weight and that density to stand up to the texture of the mushroom. Were there any questions about that?
Nothing right now, but I'll let you know if something comes in the chat.
Perfect. How you doing over there, Dee?
We're doing good. We just, I just sliced up one shallot, just nice and thin. I just halved it and then cut it into like half moons. And then the garlic is just nicely thinly chopped. And then we're also gonna add some thyme, which is, I love thyme with mushrooms. It's about like a half a tablespoon or so. And I'll show you guys what the mushrooms look like at this point. And I'm also going to drop the pasta in now. So this is hot. You can see them, they're caramelizing nicely. And they smell so good. And at this point, since they've broken down a little bit, we can add in our shallots and our garlic, and they'll keep cooking all together. The other thing you'll notice is I haven't added any salt yet. When you salt mushrooms, all their moisture comes out right away, and they tend to get like more soggy than they do nice and caramelized and golden brown. So when I saute mushrooms, I like to season more near the end. So all their moisture doesn't come out at the very beginning and they become like mushy. So at this point, when you add your shallots, where's my salt? You can add in your salt pretty heavily, season, and then some pepper, and then the thyme. I think there's a question. What does it say?
Are you using a cast iron pan?
Yeah, so this is a enamel cast iron pan, so it has the coating on it. One of those like Le Creuset braising pans. And I love this pan. I use it for honestly everything. It's so easy to take care of because it has the enamel coating and you don't need to like season it or anything like a regular cast iron. So highly recommend. They're quite pricey, but if you're gonna get like one pan for your kitchen, that's the one. That's the one. So yeah, now that our shallots are in, we're gonna just toss her around. Our pasta's cooking. And near the end, we're gonna add the heavy cream and it'll reduce and mix with all the like pan goodness and turn into a really beautiful sauce. And yeah, Parmesan, cream, truffle oil. That's it. I'll show you guys what this looks like now once the shallots have cooked out a bit. Can you see that, or is the steam?
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Really does.
And you'll see, like, you see how much the mushrooms cooked down? Like, mushrooms are sort of like spinach in the sense that the whole bowl will just turn into like half a cup. So don't be afraid to saute a lot. And you can also do it in stages. If you're doing a big batch of pasta, like if I'm cooking this for my family, I'll often saute the mushrooms in batches so they do get caramelized and all the goodness and don't just turn into like mush. And then I'll add them all back into the pan once they've been sauteed a little bit each. So that's one. So the reason why I love this apple crisp recipe is because it's sort of like deconstructed. You do your apples on the stove, and then you do the crisp portion in the oven, sort of like a cookie, and then you can just like assemble it yourself. And I find that really great if you are making it just like for yourself to have all week, because the apples can stay like nice in the fridge or whatever without the crisp on top, and the crisp stays like crispy separately. So when you go to like assemble it the next day, the crisp is still crispy and it doesn't like sog in the fridge with the apples. So it's like two separate things, amazing together. So we're gonna make the crisp portion, which is butter softened to room temp. And then in here, I feel like my lighting is awful. What's that? Is that better? Maybe? I don't know. So here's oats, flour, pecans, brown sugar, some salt, and some cinnamon. And I'm actually using gluten-free flour. So this is fully gluten-free. Same with the crostini, same with the pasta. Can you catch a theme? So yeah, we're gonna mix this together. Any questions? No? Yeah, so we're gonna mix this together. Sort of like a big cookie. Let's check on this. So with the pasta, you want to add it to the sauce at like pre-al dente so it can continue to cook and the starches will come out and help make the sauce super velvety and rich. So yeah, you don't want to overcook the pasta, and then by the time it cooks in the sauce, it'll be like falling apart. So I think my pasta is almost ready. And I'm gonna use my hands for this, sorry, to really get the butter into everything.
Dee,
Messy.
there's a
Yeah.
question about what type of apple you're using. Did you mention?
No, I haven't mentioned that. Yeah, so I'm actually using a mix. I'm using Granny Smith and Honeycrisp. So I like the mix because Honeycrisp is a little bit more sweeter, and then you get the tartness from the Granny Smith. But you could use whatever apple you like, but I like having a little bit of a mixture. So this is your cookie crust crisp topping. And I'm just gonna put it on a sheet tray. Sort of like a big cookie, I guess. And we're gonna bake that. Wash my hand. Crazy how dark it gets so early. It's like already almost dark here in Toronto.
Well, I guess Joey.
Yeah, this is the cookie crumb thing. And we're gonna put that in the oven. And that's gonna cook for about like 10 to 12 minutes. I'm gonna put a timer because I always forget. And we're gonna add our cream to the pasta now. So about half a cup. And you can turn it back up if you had turned it down, so that help bring up the cream to a simmer and let it reduce and thicken. So we'll leave that do its thing for a second. Our noodles looking good. And what else was I gonna say? Got our mushrooms, we got our Parmesan. Yeah, everything's looking pretty good right now. I'm in pretty good shape. Did you put anything else in the, sorry, I can't read that. What does it say? In the water with pasta, just salt, lots of salt. And that's it. This is what I was gonna say. The other thing is, we're using heavy cream with the mushrooms, and it wouldn't work really the same if you tried to use like milk or another lower fat dairy. So definitely go for the heavy cream. Like milk would separate and it wouldn't create that velvety consistency in the sauce. So heavy cream. So this is reducing nicely. A little bit longer.
Is the cream 35%?
35, yeah, whipping cream, yeah.
Thanks.
So I'll try to show you where we're at right now with this. If I put it here, maybe we can finish the pasta together up here. So you'll see it's like, when you move it around, the sauce sort of holds its place, which is what you want. And then we're gonna just add the pasta right into the sauce. You don't need to strain it or anything because the pasta water is really good to create that velvety sauce. All the starch is in that pasta water. Oops, lost a noodle. And you can use any pasta you want. I love rigatoni. This is rigatoni, but you could use like a long noodle, like fettuccine would be really nice. Yeah, whatever noodle you like. So I'm gonna get this back on the stove just for a second. And finish adding the rest of these noodles. And then we'll add the Parmesan, a little bit of lemon, and the truffle. I don't have a Pinot Noir to drink, so I'm sad. I'm gonna add a little pepper as well. And with your sauce, if you're noticing like it's starting to like glump up and it's not smooth anymore, you can just add a little bit more pasta water, and that will help bring it to a smooth consistency. The other thing, we're gonna garnish with some chives. I love, 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 love chives. Chives. So we're just gonna thinly chop them up for a garnish. It's nice to have something like green, I feel like, on top. That's probably good. And then, like I mentioned, just the juice of a little bit of lemon, just like a squeeze. Just helps like cut a little bit of the fat from all that cream. So here we are. I don't know if you guys can see that well, but I need like a cameraman here.
It looks great.
So this is sort of what you're looking for. I'm gonna add the Parmesan now off heat. The reason why I add it off heat is so it doesn't glump. It actually like smooths into the sauce and emulsifies with the pasta water. And I'm gonna add a touch of pasta water when I add the Parmesan, and just stir till it combines. So the other thing too with pasta, you always want it to be saucier in your pot, because as soon as it hits a plate or as soon as it gets off heat, the sauce will seize up. So like, you might think, oh, that's like a loose looking sauce, but as soon as you take it off heat and plate it, it'll like clump up. So it's good to start off with a more saucy situation, and we can plate it up. I stole this dish. I work in a test kitchen. I stole this pretty bowl from our props department. Don't tell them. And the other thing is the truffle. So I just have white truffle oil. It's not even like the nice kind. It's sort of the cheap one, but you don't ever really want to cook white truffle oil. So you just, how's our cookie? Looking good. You just want to drizzle at the end. Just a little bit goes a long way too. I'm sure you guys, if you've ever had like truffle fries or anything, it's quite intense. And then we can garnish with a little bit more parm and chives, and voila.
That looks amazing.
Smells good.
And there was a question, why do you not want to cook the truffle oil?
It just like actually ruins, like truffle is a really expensive ingredient. So if you cook it, it actually it like reduces the intensity of the flavor. So it's just almost like wasteful, I guess. I don't think that's the right word, but if you want it to really like shine as an ingredient, it's best not cooked. But that's not the same. That's not the truth. Like that's just white truffle oil. But if you were to use like truffle paste or anything like that, definitely you could cook it. Okay, last thing. How are we doing on time?
6:50. So
We're good.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have a bite of this. You guys have to always taste your food, right?
There's a few attendees just saying how good it looks.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But I like mushrooms, but can't get past the rubbery texture. If I finally chop it so it's almost like minced, that would be okay.
Yeah, and you could totally do that here. Like if you don't like the texture, but you like the flavor of a mushroom, that's a good way to, and to be honest, I actually didn't like mushrooms like 5 years ago. I thought the same as you. I thought they were rubbery and weird, and like, I just didn't like them. And then I think if you were to like mince them up and put them into a sauce, that's a good like intro into them too. And then eventually you might be like, yeah, give me all the mushroom, you know? So that's a good idea. I like that idea. I think my cookie's almost burnt. One sec. Yeah, a little bit toasty. But it's a crisp, so you want it to be nice and golden, right? But yeah, so this is gonna be the crisp on top. I'm gonna put this off to the side so it can cool. It won't be crispy right away. It needs to needs to set, and then it'll be crumbly. So I guess we can move on to apples. And I'm just gonna be cutting apples. Joey, if you wanna talk about the final pairing.
Sure. I'm also really excited for this one. I'm kind of heartbroken that we're not able to do this collectively because you don't have the wine and I don't have that food in front of me. It's really breaking my heart.
We should have done it together.
I know, like,
what are you thinking?
Moving forward. So with the easy apple crisp, I was thrilled to be able to pair a cognac, and I'm a big fan of an underdog, and I feel like cognac is an underdog. I think a lot of people think cognac and relate it to sort of something an older gentleman might drink with a cigar in a lounge with leather-bound books and big oversized chairs. And it is just one of the most spectacular, history-laden, dripping with, I don't know, just like intrigue and it's just such a spectacular liquid. It requires so much like painstaking effort to create. And it's just so special. I was actually able to, and again, I forewarned you all that I'm a massive dork, but I wrote a thesis on cognac and I had already liked it. And throughout the process of researching the history, I just fell madly in love. So when I can drink a cognac, I am absolutely drinking a cognac, and it's not something that I reserve for sort of the cooler, like fall and winter times of the year. There's definitely ways that it can be enjoyed year round. For this particularly, I know I kind of spoke with Food and Wine Pairing about how you can do sort of opposites attract, or you can try and enhance. So again, this is a pairing that's meant to enhance those notes. Cognac is actually a wine-based spirit, and the base of cognac, the wine itself, is made from a grape called Nid Blanc. And one of the major characteristics of that grape, specifically once it's been fortified into cognac, is apple. So this is, again, it's such an easy breezy, lemon squeezy kind of pairing to have. You've still got that beautiful acidity from the wine itself, which is actually, again, going to help cut through any of the caramelized sugary notes and kind of keep your palate refreshed. The apple sort of base to the wine in the spirit is going to enhance those flavors. But particularly special with cognac is the time it spends in oak and what kind of oak, and where it's actually housed in cognac. And throughout that process, you actually really pick up these gorgeous notes of vanilla, but really specifically of sort of cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove. Which when you look at that recipe, just sort of hits it right on the spot. So really all we're trying to do here is recreate in the glass what we've got on the plate. And the two dishes, because they're in harmony and they're mirroring each other's components, it really should be like a beautiful balance on your palate.
I was just saying, I wish I had some cognac now.
I really wish everyone would have some cognac. I love those mini bottles that I've suggested because it's a great sort of, inexpensive way to have some fun with cognac, experiment with cognac. A lot of people like it neat. I personally like it with just 1 cube, maybe 2 in a glass, and that little bit of water from the ice actually helps cut through. So I know a lot of people have a hard time sipping on spirits. And that's fair. Cognac is kind of like whiskey in that capacity, where it can have a really high alcohol content. So having that cube or 2 to kind of actually literally dilute some of the alcohol not only helps, but kind of creates a break in the alcohol content to, again, release those aromatics. So you'll actually get more out of the aromatics and on your palate with that method. So that's my suggestion.
Wow.
So Joey, it would be considered a spirit and not a liqueur?
It's a spirit.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like Grand Marnier is a liqueur that was created to mimic the profile of cognac.
One actually just wrote in the chat, we found the small bottle. We tried 4 LCBO stores. I guess looking for it.
You know what? They're usually, I highly recommend when you're in an LCBO, if you're looking for something, speak to somebody that's there, because more often than not, as somebody who's worked in this industry for a decade, they've got them nooked in the back, or they've got them in a part of the store that you would just never think to look for. I did check the inventory with the company itself, like with Moet Hennessy, and there's 220 cases in Ontario. So it should be kicking around, but usually the really small format bottles for cognac specifically, and this is so tragic, are often under lock and key. And that's because they rank really highly. I think the cognac and then those mini bottles of cognac are in like the top 5 things that are stolen from the LCBO.
Oh my God.
Really?
I know, it's so like, it's so, I don't know, it's kind of sad and bizarre, but yeah, people love to steal cognac.
And so there's a question, what's the difference between a spirit and a liqueur?
Really predominantly it's in the process, like in the production method. Spirits, you're looking at, you know, your vodka, your gins, your tequila, your cognacs. Liqueurs are usually on the sweeter side of things. And again, there's often a good amount of sugar added to them and flavoring. So spirits have a much more traditional mainline procedure and process into the production that usually is sacred and steeped in history. Even, you know, sort of the origins of rum, tequila, they've all got great stories behind them. And I'm not hating on liqueurs. It's a very different process with a different focus. Lots of additions. So coloring, sometimes botanicals are added to liqueurs, lots of sugar. Sweater, delicious.
I'll just show you guys where we're at with the apples. I was just sauteing them in some butter. And I just diced them up. I leave the skins on. I like the skins. I don't mind them, but you could totally peel if that's what you prefer. And then we're gonna add just some brown sugar and cinnamon. So I have about 4 apples, and then I have about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and about half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And the sugars will also help break down the apple. And then, yeah, you're just gonna simmer that. It really only takes like 5 to 10 minutes. I also like my apples with like a little bit of a bite. I don't like them too mushy, but to your discretion, you can keep cooking them longer if you want them more like jammy, up to you. And then, yeah, once that's done, I just like to assemble it with like the apples underneath and then the crisp on top and some ice cream or whipped cream or whatever you have. Even yogurt would be good. You could have this for breakfast. I'll take a look at that semi-burnt apple crisp, crumble. I'm just gonna peel off the areas that are a little dark. That's okay. Lots going on in here today. And then you can see sort of it's like a big cookie. And you can just like break it apart. So good. Mmm. And yeah, so I like to keep this part separate from the apples if I am gonna have it like the next day. Because I feel like the best part of an apple crisp is the crispy topping. And then once you put it in your fridge, the crispy topping goes away. So this way, it's crispy forever. So it's messy, but this is what we're looking at right now. Crispy, crumbly topping. And then let's see how our apples are. So they're looking nice and caramelized, smelling like cinnamon. Can you see? And then also vanilla. I forgot. Add vanilla. Just about half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So those are looking pretty well done. I'm going to serve up a spoonful or two. So I put about a spoonful or two. See how I like mine? I do like mine a little bit more like solid, but you could definitely take it longer and more jammy. And then you top it with some of the Crust. And I even bought ice cream for this. So we're gonna go all out tonight. Kawartha, the best. And a big scoop of vanilla ice cream. This really reminds me, like I feel like I'm in definitely fall mode now. There you go. Easy, super quick, deconstructed apple crisp. I think that's all the cooking. I think we're done.
That looks amazing. Joey,
That was a lot.
Joey, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or is that?
No, I honestly, I think that was great. Honestly, Dee, that was pretty amazing. That deconstructed apple crisp is like legitimately the food version of cognac. Like it's like it literally like the vanilla, the apple, the cinnamon, like it's bang on. It's probably delicious.
It's good. I feel so bad just eating.
Yeah.
Well, I would be doing the same.
I hope you've all had dinner before this, or like you have food on the way or something, because you all deserve all the food tonight.
I know there are some people following along, and this event is being recorded. So for anyone who joined in or signed in late, it will be added to the Algonquin College Always Connected website. So I added the link to the chat. And someone just wrote, will you ladies be hosting more food and wine pairings? I absolutely love this.
Oh, that's so nice. I feel like the next one we have to get together, Joey.
I know. We
have
at least
to do it properly.
Gotta make sure we got that wine. I need to eat some of this food.
Yes, absolutely. That would be so fun. I would love to do that.
And thank you both so much. I'm adding if anyone's interested, both Dee and Joey's Instagrams to the chat, so you can check them out, or if anyone has questions, feel free to message them on Instagram or check out Dee's website. And thank you again, Dee, Joey. Thank you to all the attendees for joining us today. Again, the recording will be added to the AC Always Connected website. Our next event is on Wednesday, October 7th, and it's from 11 a.m. until 12 p.m. And it's for Mental Illness Awareness Week. We have Dr. Jennifer Thake, who will be talking about self-care. So if you're interested in that, I'll add the link to the chat as well. And it's on the Algonquin College Student Services website. So all our upcoming events will be listed there. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks,
guys. It's so fun. Have a good night.
It's a pleasure.